ANZAC Day is one of the most important memorial days in Australia, held on the 25th of April every year. What is ANZAC Day? What do you know about ANZAC Day? ANZAC Day commemorates the day in 1915, when Australian and New Zealand Army Corps landed in Gallipoli, Turkey, during World War I. On that fateful day, Australian and New Zealand soldiers landed in what is now called ANZAC Cove, to be faced with shelling and enemy fire from a large, well-prepared and fierce Turkish force. With only sea behind them, progressing forward was near impossible for the Anzacs. Where is Gallipoli? The Gallipoli Peninsula is located in the Eastern European part of Turkey. During the 8-month campaign, 8,709 Australians lost their lives, along with 2,701 New Zealanders. In proportion to both nations' populations at the time, this was a both devastating and monumental loss. While the troops were eventually forced to withdraw, the Gallipoli battle was the birthplace of the Anzac spirit. This spirit is synonymous with bravery, ingenuity, and mateship, traits exhibited by the Australian and New Zealand troops during the battle. The first anniversary of the Gallipoli landing was held on 25th of April 1916. It was on this day that the acting Australian Prime Minister officially declared the date Anzac Day. By the 1920s, all the Australian states had appointed Anzac Day as a public holiday, and ceremonies were being held nationwide. As ceremonies continued through, the 1940s World War II veterans also attended the parades. Recently, returned servicemen and women from battles across the globe have been remembered and represented in the ceremonies. The first dawn service was held at the Sydney Cenotaph in 1927. Initially, dawn services were restricted to war veterans only, allowing soldiers a time to reflect with their fellow returned servicemen. However, in recent times, families and young people alike have been encouraged to participate. Every year, Anzac Day is commemorated with dawn services across Australia. During battle, soldiers were made to rise in the half hour before dawn, so they were positioned with their weapons at the very first light, which was the favoured time for attack. Returned soldiers recalled it had been quiet and peaceful moment. This routine is called a stand-to and became the basis of a form of the commemoration. Anzac ceremonies have become more elaborate as the years pass, with huge turnouts at war memorials, cenotaphs, and remembrance shrines nationwide. Generally, an Anzac ceremony includes a speech from a local dignitary or serviceman or woman, laying of a wreath, reciting of the poem For the Fallen by Lawrence Binyon, playing of the last post, followed by a minute's silence, and then the ruse. The red poppies. In English literature of the 19th century, red poppies had symbolized sleep. After the First World War, the red poppy becomes an international symbol of war remembrance, the sacrifice of shed blood. During the First World War, red poppies were among the first plants to sprout up in the devastated battlefields of northern France and Belgium. For soldiers, the vivid red of the poppy on the battlefield came from the blood of their comrades soaking the ground. Anzac biscuit. New Zealand and Australia share a tradition of Anzac biscuits. It was one of the food items that people in both countries sent to soldiers during the First World War. It was a hard, long-keeping biscuit that could survive the journey by sea and still remain edible. These were known as soldiers' biscuits, but after the Gallipoli landings in 1915, they became known as Anzac biscuits. Soldiers themselves may have made a similar form of biscuit from ingredients they had on hand: water, sugar, rolled oats, and flour. Attending an Anzac ceremony in your local area is both a valuable experience and a memorable way to pay respect to the thousands of soldiers who fought for the freedom of this great nation. Here are some things to do.